Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Childless Not by Choice podcast, where my mission is to recognize and speak to the childless not by choice women and men around the world. Civilla Morgan here. I am spreading the great news that we can live a joyful, relevant, and fulfilled life, although we did not have the children we so wanted. I also welcome you even if you do not fit the demographic. Maybe you did not want children. Maybe you have children. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to episode 122. In this episode, the title, by the way, is Mapping the Journey, Living the Life of a Childless Not by Choice Woman. We have a guest because, well, you guys are probably tired of hearing how I'm living the life of a childless not by choice woman, so I wanted to bring someone in. But I'll tell you more about our guest in just a moment. Patreon patrons, I would like to thank you for your monthly contributions to the platform. If you would like to join the Patreon family of monthly contributors, visit patreon.com/childless not by choice and set up your monthly contribution for as little as $5 per month. No matter your giving level, I have a gift for you. So come on over to patreon.com/childless not by choice and check it out. Check out all of the different giving levels. And I'm thanking you in advance. And I'm also, again, thanking those of you who have been giving. Many of you have been giving for quite some time, and I really do appreciate that. Those funds go directly back into the platform. I'm paying my podcast producer, paying my podcast host, paying my website manager. Everybody gets to get paid every month. So whatever you can do would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so moving right along. Also remember that Stitcher, and all of this is in the show notes, but check out the Stitcher ad that I have in the show notes. Many of you know that I use Stitcher for the most part, although I have access on my iPhone to all of the podcasting apps. I have most of my podcast listening done in Stitcher. They have a premium version where you pay $4.99 per month or $34.99 per year. That's as well as the free version. So that's Stitcher. And thanks to Stitcher for the opportunity. If you decide to go with the premium version, go in with Not by Choice as your promo code for that discount. Not by Choice. So, as I said, we have a guest today. Ruth Berkowitz, MA, is a wellness coach for individuals, children, and families. Ruth says that her mission is to help raise the divine feminine back to her rightful place within the woman, the family, and society. She holds a Master of Arts in Counseling Psychology with an emphasis in spiritual psychology, sociology, family systems, mindful meditation and movement, and creative expression. They inform her healing with herself and others. Ruth is 49 years old, childless not by choice, by circumstance. Her intention is to see the opportunities for healing and growth in this loss while carrying the grief with grace and acceptance. I really like that. Her heartfelt aspiration is to empower herself and others to reframe their life story and find purpose and fulfillment as the nurturing, generative women they already are. Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Civilla. Great.
I'm glad you're here, and I am so looking forward to this conversation because I know that as we talked before, I was saying that I know the listeners are probably tired of hearing how I'm living the childless not by choice life, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to bring you in as you live the childless not by choice life. And by the way, to those of you listening, Ruth is a member of the Childless Not by Choice with Civilla Morgan Facebook group. That's another great reason I wanted to have her on. But she's a member of our platform. She's doing life with us via social media. And some of you may think, well, it's just social media. But trust me, community, especially right now in the time of COVID, many of us are spending quite a bit of time on social media in various groups, and hopefully you're listening and tuning into a very positive space on social media wherever you are. We don't need any more negativity, so hopefully you're spending your time in positive places on social media. And the Childless Not by Choice with Civilla Morgan Facebook group, if you are a childless not by choice woman, is a great place to be, because although we have our down times and our negative moments where, life just didn't work out for us, didn't work out the way we expected, the way we wanted, but we cannot stay in a negative space for too long without it affecting us. And so our platform, I love the fact that that's the way I started it, and that's the way I want it to be. We can be real there and talk about how badly we may be feeling, but it's a place and a spirit of positivity. And Ruth can tell you more about that as we talk here today. So that's one of the main reasons I wanted to have her on. Well, a couple of the reasons. But let's get started, Ruth, now that I've said so much. I have a question for you. And also, as a listener, if you want to reach out to Ruth, I will put her contact information, whatever contact information she gives me, I'll put it in the show notes. And so you can reach out to her directly. But let's get started. Let's hit the ground running. What is the most challenging part of being childless not by choice?
The heaviness, the feelings and the thoughts that go on inside of me around it. I've carried a lot of shame about it and a lot of grief about it. Obviously there's the sadness of not having that dream fulfilled. But then there's also so many judgments of myself that weigh me down, that come from the expectations of my family and my culture, the sort of given that, you grow up and you have children. That's what people do. And not really having this path in life kind of be visible and be seen as, a fulfilling way to live.
Right. Because it was never a thought. We never had to think about what if. We never thought about what if because we were surrounded by people who had already had children. So we assumed we would too.
Well, I think it's also because it's so in the shadow, and that's the counter shaming for myself and others that I really want to do is to talk about it. I mean, honestly, I feel ashamed still to say that I'm childless not by choice, to, just put it out there that I'm going to be on this podcast. It's not something that's talked about, and yet, as you said, it's about 25% of the population.
Right.
The invisibility and the shame, there's no sort of milestone for it, no set point where you like with other kinds of losses, it's a moment in time when the loss happens. And there's maybe rituals that different cultures have to ease the grief. And there's, ways for the community to come and surround the grieving person. But with this, it can be very lonely and feel like there's something wrong with me that this happened.
Right, because again, it's like you said, it's not talked about. Death is talked about. Death is quote unquote normal. When you lose a loved one, it's normal. And you know what? Even in that, even in the loss of a loved one, people still judge you if they think that you're grieving for too long.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, our culture doesn't really allow much grieving, even for the recognized losses.
Right.
So for this kind of loss, there's absolutely no recognition and no customs around it.
Right. And that's what I believe, not trying to put myself up on a pedestal, but because there are many other childless not by choice platforms out there. But I think we're all on the journey as platforms and platform founders and leaders. and those who have joined us as Childless Not by Choice people to get the word out. That's what I've been saying for the last 5 years. I'm trying to get the word out globally that childlessness and childlessness not by choice is a thing. And we're going to talk about it and shout it from the mountaintops and normalize it, because childlessness has been around since the beginning of time. And because we talk more about the woman who has the child or has the children, that gets talked about. We now need to talk about the fact that there is a woman who is hiding in plain sight, who feels judged, even if it's self-judged, because I've been there, and shamed, self-shamed, because I've been there. You feel ashamed of not having children, literal shame, ashamed of yourself for not having children, because that's what society says we're supposed to do. But society doesn't talk about what happens when it doesn't happen, because society doesn't talk about things that, especially like I said before, death. When we lose a loved one, we just want to look the other way. Anything that seems negative or appears to be negative, we may deal with it with you for a little while, but after a minute, we're just like, you know what, get over it. And I've heard people being told, even in the loss of a loved one, just get over it. It's been a year. It's been 2 years. It's been 5 years. And so society wants us to get over it, basically. And then in the meantime, we're in our own heads, challenging ourselves as human beings, feeling shame on the inside of our brains and self-judgment because we didn't get to do what society thought we should do, which I just thought about it. How dare society tell me how things are supposed to work? Society doesn't have the power to make it happen, right?
Right. What I realized is it's such a sense of failure, which is something I struggle with in my life in general. And it's the ultimate powerlessness to want to create life and not be able to, for various reasons different people have.
I mean, reasons such as, mine are similar to yours. It's by circumstance. I just never met the right person. I never met the right guy. And I just wasn't willing to raise a child on my own, although I thought about it via adoption. It was something I considered as things were getting worse for me and the biological clock was really running out. But I really didn't want to have to raise a child by myself. And I really was hoping to meet the right man, and it just never happened. I mean, society then wants me to just go ahead and just lay with somebody.
Yeah, that was never an option for me.
Right.
Doing it on my own for various reasons. It was just, I knew that would be too much for me. And, I have thought about this because we talked about this in the Zoom group we had recently. And so I've been thinking about it. And, what's a way to reframe that? That's more empowering than just that I didn't meet the right person. So, in other words, what was my outer reality mirroring about my inner reality? Which isn't, is kind of a painful, confronting thing to do, but that's what we do in spiritual psychology. So, your outer reality is a reflection of your inner experience. And so I've been thinking about that, and I don't think it's sort of a confluence of knowing that I didn't want to do it just to get the genetic material without someone who I knew would be a good father and a good partner for me, but also, my own wounding that got in the way of being a healthy partner to somebody else.
That's a good point. And when you said that just a second ago, I thought to myself, well, is that kind of like blaming circumstances? And I thought, well, maybe not. So I'll ask you, is when you talk about mirroring what's going on the outside versus what's happening on the inside, is that another form of blaming oneself or blaming circumstances, or no?
Well, I think blaming circumstances is disempowering.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that there aren't. I mean, this goes into a much bigger topic about fate and destiny and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I try to orient myself. I'm not always here, and I try to get myself back to orienting towards what is the healing opportunity for me? Where's the growth for me in my circumstance, in my life, what's happening in my life and in my relationships? So in a way, whenever we're blaming something outside of ourselves, we're losing our power.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm not saying this is helpful to others, it's just an offering. What I work on, I'm not saying I live there, and it does take a lot of effort to come back to this place, because I get into self-pity. I get into, it's so unfair, look at all these people who are terrible parents and they get to be parents and I don't. There's tons of things like that go through my mind at times.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if I want to not stay there, because that doesn't serve me, that just weighs me down, how can I shift? How can I be in an empowered place and say, what is the different story I'm going to make out of this? And how can I change my thoughts about this? How can I grow from it? Because ultimately, my drive to have children is the innate biological drive. But I think from a spiritual perspective, it's about healing my family line. I wanted to give my children things that I didn't get in my childhood, that I really felt a deep, deep sadness about. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to do it that way, but I can look at it and say, okay, so what is the healing and growth opportunity in being childless, not by choice? And for me, that is, I still think healing my family line is possible by healing myself, by being the parent to that little girl who didn't get what she needed and had some trauma, didn't feel safe, giving that to her now, because the different age stages of our lives are very much alive in us. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are driven to have children to correct things from their own childhood, as I was.
Wow, those are great points and pretty deep, because it's true. We are still, as long as we live, we're still going to be 10 or it's going to, or 5 or 14, or it's still a part of us, our experience. And it took me a long time. It took me a very long time, and I'm so glad it finally happened. But it took me so long to like myself and to love myself, as I say, warts and all. We all have we have faults and failures, and there's no perfect human, and all of that good stuff, and we know that. But then we have to turn that around and turn it on ourselves. Kind of, I guess, like you were talking about mirroring earlier. We have to turn that right back onto ourselves and realize that, wait, I'm not perfect. I'm not a perfect driver in traffic. I think I'm a better driver than everybody else. There's, you know what I mean? My decisions aren't always the best. And, we both admit to being control freaks.
Yeah.
So it's just like we turn that mirror back on ourselves and realize, and when I did that, speaking for myself, when I turned that mirror back on me and realized, but through it all, I like me. I like who I've become and who I am becoming. I'm so grateful because that's a strengthener in and of itself. It strengthens you because I always say the minute you step out of your front door in the mornings, the world is out there ready to get you. And if you don't like yourself, why should anybody else? And if you don't want to take care of yourself and have respect for yourself, no one else is going to. And so you may run into this random person at once in a great while who's going to have mercy on you, even when you're not having mercy on yourself. But that's few and far between. So since we are our own company 24/7, we should turn that mirror back on ourselves and deal with who we are, our faults, our failures, our great points, the things people love about us, and put them all together and just learn to love ourselves and like ourselves, right?
That's what I'm working on. I can't say that I, consistently feel that way at this point, but that's kind of what I was alluding to, that the opportunity, the silver lining of this is that I do get to do the work to heal into self-love, into self-trust, instead of projecting things onto the next generation. Because that's what happens. The unhealed parts of ourselves get passed down to the next generation.
That's true. And there are many parents out there that are now, as they see themselves in their children, and their parents warned them that they would see themselves in their children, and a lot of them are saying the same things they did when they were 16 or 17. They're seeing their children do it, and they feel like there's nothing they can do about it because this thing just keeps going over and over generationally, and they're maybe not stopping to turn that mirror back on themselves. And I'm not, again, blaming parents. This is not about hating on parents or anything like that. This is just the different places we all are, depending on where we ended up, whether we had children or not, or, just where we are in life.
Parenting is
it's hard.
It's so hard.
Oh yeah.
And there isn't much time and energy left for contemplation and healing of self, especially, the younger the kids are. And, what I learned in my counseling training was that what happens is often when the children reach the age of when they had a major trauma, that trauma will come back up and be really activated when their child is the same age as they were when the trauma happened.
Wow.
So, and often, parents don't have the, inner resources, outer resources to really go into deep healing of that. And that's why I see it as one of the silver linings. It doesn't mean it's not like super, super painful, and that I wish that I was, a parent, that I don't wish that I was a parent that was focusing on my kids and not so much on my own stuff. But I also feel like it's a process of accepting that that's my path and embracing it and really taking that opportunity.
So speaking of silver linings, we're just basically the blessings and the silver linings, as you mentioned. We're doing the best with what we have, which is what we really should try to do as childless, not by choice women, because there are other things that have happened to other people too. There are other traumas that have happened to people. For us, we're talking about being childless, not by choice, but we've got to then make the decision. And I talk about choice all the time on this podcast, but we have to choose to do the best with what we have.
Yeah, and I think comparative suffering is never makes anyone feel better. So yeah, everybody's got disappointments, and everyone's got a story.
Yeah.
And so when I go into that self-pity place and like, oh, this is worse, this is so much more painful than what this other person is going through because they got to have kids. I have to
Mm-hmm.
stop myself, like
Yeah.
comparing my insides to their outsides. Who
Right.
knows? Just because someone has a family doesn't mean that they're not racked with shame and grief too, for
Right.
whatever reasons they have. The
Exactly.
human condition is a heavy one.
Yeah, it is. It is. No
So
matter what we have going on. So I'm struggling over. I'm looking at three different questions here, and I'm struggling with the next one to ask you because I just feel like I'm going to ask you all three. So, but this one I'm going to ask you first because I did an episode on triggers. So, how do you cope with triggers?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that. It depends on how I'm doing. Sometimes I handle them well and sometimes not so well. And it's really important for me to be compassionate with myself and forgiving of myself if I'm not skillful in how I handle a trigger at a certain point. That being said, actually I'm coming to begin to speak out in service to raising awareness when something happens that's sort of like someone says something that is triggering just out of sort of ignorance, to take the opportunity to speak the truth, to speak my truth. So like last night I went to a women's circle, and the beginning of the circle is everyone saying, I am the granddaughter of so and so and so and so. I'm the daughter of so and so, and I'm the mother of, and I thought, oh God. And I went into it knowing that I was probably going to be the only childless person there. And so I had mentally kind of prepared for that, and like, okay, you might get triggered and it's okay. You can handle it. And, if you have to leave the situation, that's okay. So I think just even giving myself permission
Right.
to do that was really helpful. So when that happened, I had a choice. It was a choice point.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to be in victimization and blaming? They should know better. They shouldn't say that. They should be more inclusive. Or am I just going to take this opportunity to share my experience and hopefully make it a little easier for the next woman in that situation? And so that's what I did. I, not in that moment as we just went around the circle and only did that, but when it was time for sharing on a deeper level about what's going on for us, I said, this is what's on my heart, because that's what she said, let's share what's on our heart. This is here. So I am going to share it. And that's bringing it out of the dark into the light. That's taking away the shame. And I think that the triggering is born out of the shame and the self-judgment. I mean, it's also this like, I don't belong, which is another story I have going in my head a lot that I've noticed I'm working on. And then there's times where I just have to avoid the situation, and I have to be okay with that. I would love to be like an enlightened being that can be in a deeply painful situation and, keep my calm and cool and be able to stay there. But I'm not. I'm a human being, and it's too painful sometimes. And so the way I deal with it is I give myself the choice, and I keep in mind my intention of letting go of control. Like I can't control the world so that nobody ever triggers me.
Right.
And I think I used to kind of feel that way, not consciously, but just to take responsibility for my triggering. And if it feels right in the moment, I can politely, gently let someone know, well, this is the situation. Not everybody gets to have kids or whatever
Right.
is happening in the moment. But also, if it's too painful, I don't have to go to that baby shower or,
Right.
whatever it is, whatever situation, family event or,
Right.
and that it's really important for me to, like I said, just be gentle with myself, compassionate, and forgive myself for not being stronger sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it was in that episode, trigger. How do we deal with our triggers? I'm going to put that in the show notes for this episode, a link to that episode. But I believe it was that episode where I talked about planning ahead so that we don't fly off the handle when we're triggered. It's important because if we keep, losing it, flying off the handle, all of that stuff when we're triggered, we're not healing ourselves, and everybody around us is walking on eggshells, and they can't help us. And you're right, a lot of times it's us helping ourselves. And I've talked about this before too, you don't have to go to the baby shower. You don't have to go to put on a brave face and show up, and on the inside you're completely falling apart when they're playing the baby games or the pamper cake or whatever it is that they make. I will say that I don't go to baby showers. I haven't in years. However, I'm attending a virtual, by the time you hear this, it would have happened already, this episode, but I'm attending a virtual Zoom baby shower because my nephew and his wife are having their first baby. I can't not go. I want to, but that's what you were saying. I want to be there. I mean, I'm glad it's on Zoom. And you know what, even if it were in person, even if we weren't living in COVID and we were living in quote unquote normal times, I would still go because I love my nephew. I love his new wife. They've been married a little over a year. I love them. And not that I don't love the other people that invited me, but I made the choice to go. So you may choose to go to one shower and not the other.
I think what's important is having a plan.
Right,
have
a plan.
Time.
Exactly. Have a plan, an exit plan if you need one.
An exit strategy.
Exactly.
An emergency plan.
Exactly. Have a plan B, and if you need to go, you need to go. This is going to be on Zoom, and so hey, it's really virtual. I don't see why I would need to. I don't know how many people will be there. I don't know if everybody knows my story. It's not about me, etc. So for me, I just have to have a plan for myself, but I will be there with bells on because I love my nephew and my new niece-in-law, and I'm looking forward to spoiling this baby like I spoiled my 3 nephews. I mean, I am so looking forward to this. So again, I guess the bottom line is we have to make choices. We have to speak to ourselves. We have to plan ahead and know what our triggers are, and then just, hey, this is why I wanted everybody to hear another point of view, to see that, yes, I'm a relatively intelligent person, and I started this podcast out of the goodness of my heart and my pain 5 years ago. But I really want you all to hear how somebody else in this space is dealing. I want you to hear somebody else's point of view.
Another thing, and this is, I'm a pretty open book. So sometimes I will explain. I mean, I haven't had a ton of these situations. I don't have a big family, and I lived in LA for most of my adult life, so it wasn't a lot of weddings and baby showers and stuff like that. But, on the occasions where I have had this kind of situation, I've explained, it's just too painful for me. And I don't know how that sits with the person I'm telling, but it helps me because I feel like I am letting them know It's not about them. It's not a snub.
Right.
This is just, it's just what I need to do to take care of myself right now.
Right. Self-care. It's a buzzword, but it's true. Self-care.
Yeah.
As we wind down our time here, Ruth, I wanted to, before I forget, Ruth mentioned a little while back that we had a discussion in our Zoom meeting. And I just want to let everybody know, if you're not a part of the Childless Not by Choice with Civilla Morgan Facebook group, and you are a childless not by choice woman, come on in, because that's the only place that I'm going to post the Zoom link for our future meetings. And I'm hoping to have a meeting every couple of months or so. And so we had our conversation in the Zoom meeting. It was a handful of us. It was a nice get together. We did it before on Mother's Day on Facebook, but I think going forward we're going to have it on Zoom. So if you really want a place to come in, and you can come on video or not, but most of us were on video, and we just sat there and talked, and we joined in from all over the planet, right? I mean, one of my moderators is in Scotland. And another moderator is just an hour and a half south of me. And then Ruth was in there, and a couple other people. Come on in, no matter where in the world you are. If you can grab the Zoom link, because I will place it in our group, in our Facebook group, and just join the conversation. I'll be posting in there when the next one is. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before we
thanks
continue.
for bringing that up, because that was really uplifting for me. I've been pretty down, I mean, with everything going on in the outside world too, and this. And it was really uplifting to just be with other women who understand, and where I don't have to put on a brave face. And also, I wanted to also mention that for the Mother's Day get together or Facebook Live, I was actually feeling pretty strong in acceptance and all that. And I just really wanted to be there to uplift others. So, I just want your listeners to remember that's there. That's an opportunity there. And that finding ways to channel my nurturing, my desire to be in connection with others and to be a positive force in the lives of others. There's opportunities. There's plenty of opportunities to do that. It's not the same thing as having your own children, and I'm not saying that it is, but that can be channeled.
It's quite true. As I always talk about, I have 3 nephews. I never had my own children, but my nephews, I've been in their life from the time they were born. I mean, I've taken them for the weekend. I've taken them to the museums. I've changed diapers and cleaned up throw up and all that good stuff. They weren't my kids, but I got to do those things. And even the cleaning throw up to me was awesome. I got to clean up throw up, and I got to clean Pampers, and I didn't know what was happening and what was going to happen and not happen for me. But as I look back on it, I'm glad I had the experiences. No, it wasn't like being their actual mother, but I'm still thankful for the experiences. It got me the opportunity to, as you said, nurture. And then we have our own way, our ways as childless, not by choice women to nurture. I think about that episode, and I'm going to have to look that one up. It's a ways back, but that episode where the one woman from, was it the Netherlands, who wrote me to tell me how this one particular episode, I think it's called What About the Children, where after she listened to that episode, it got her to buying a Barbie for an underprivileged child every Christmas. So we will have to find our own ways of nurturing without making people feel uncomfortable, of course, but there are so many ways.
There is sort of am I being is this creepy? That I'm interested.
Just ask yourself that question. Exactly. Ask yourself that question before you do it. But I mean, the fact is there are so many ways, and I'm not trying to, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I even give, at my church, not openly, but I give to certain events because there might be a parent who can't afford to send their child to a particular event. So sometimes I make a contribution anonymously. Now it's not so much, but it is still kind of, because they don't know I'm doing it at the time. But I give for them to put into the funding for a family that may not be able to send their child to a particular event. There are so many different ways for us to turn around and take our grief and just use it against itself, and just help others in our walk through and journey through life. So any last words before we tune out of this episode, Ruth? It was so great to have you on here. This was just so
thank you for having
awesome.
me.
Yeah, it was cerebral.
Well, any last words? Just, I feel you. I'm with you. Find other women and men who are also heavy in the heart with this same situation. That really helps me a lot. And, reinvent yourself, find a new dream, a new way to express your purpose of creating and nurturing the next generation.
Yeah, that's an awesome ending point right there. And just remember, everybody, if you're not subscribed to the podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcast, or and you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. It sounds so cheesy to say that, but for this podcast, it's true. I mean, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, iHeartRadio, Pandora. Wherever you listen to podcasts, most likely we're there. So tell your friends and family, especially if you know someone who is childless not by choice, tell them there is nothing more important than community. And sometimes you need to be in community with people who get it, as well as any other communities that you belong to, because it's a way to nurture you through your journey and to uplift you. So, Ruth, I want to just thank you once again for this opportunity. And thanks everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. Until next time, have a great one. Bye.